Hi guys, and welcome to the Watch Lobby, where we'll talk about anything and everything watch related. This is my first YouTube video, so bear with me while I figure a lot of this out. Some of you guys might be here from Instagram. If so, thanks for coming along. If not, and you're new, feel free to head over to Instagram at the Watch Lobby, where I've been creating content over there for about 5 years. Now let's get on to this video. I've been a watch collector for about 10 to 12 years, and I've bought and sold so many pieces I've lost count. What I want to do today is go over my current state of collection as of the end of 2020. I've left some pieces out that don't really get worn, the likes of some G-Shocks and some other pieces that I've been gifted over the years. Let me know if you guys would like to see a video on that. Leave a comment below on any of the watches you see today that you'd like to see an in-depth review on. Before we get started, I'd like to make it clear that all the pieces are worn and none are safe queens, so I'll expect to see some marks and scratches on all the pieces. With that said, let's get started. First up is the Seiko SSA 001. This one has been in my collection for about 6 years and it still gets a lot of wrist time today. It uses the Seiko 4R37 movement with 24-hour indicator, also fitted with a slide rule bezel and waffle dial. This piece has gone unnoticed by a lot of Seiko enthusiasts. Moving on, we've got the Seiko Saab 065, also known as a cocktail time. Another long-term piece of mine, this one has been seen with many different straps. It's an absolute strap monster. You currently see it on a polished stube Milanese bracelet, which dresses the look of the watch up. The OG Cocktail Time, which is now discontinued, was released with Seiko's 6R15 movement. Moving on, we've got the Seiko Monsters. The next two watches are two very polarizing pieces. The Seiko Monsters. You either love them or you hate them. Me, I personally love them. What you see first is the 4th gen, which in my opinion is the most refined iteration of the Monster, with its fitted end links and more squared off lugs. This has only been a recent addition to my collection from the start of this year. As we move on to the 2nd generation, and arguably the most iconic Monster, with those teeth-shaped indices and rugged look, a favourite of mine in the collection. I sold my original 2nd gen Monster about 8 years ago and very quickly regretted it. Then added this Dracula back into my collection a few years later. Next up is the Seiko Sumo 1st generation. Another piece that's been floating around my collection for years, the OG 1st gen. This is one heck of a watch, packing a heavy punch. This one used to be my daily beater, which has resulted in some battle scars, one of which resulted in a hefty gouge on the original crystal. So as you see now, I've fitted it with a double dome crystal. Here we go, yet another Seiko. This was added to my collection late in 2019 after I saw that sunburst style and lacquered bezel insert firsthand. This is one watch where photos and videos don't do it any justice. Like a few Seikos we've already gone over, this one also has a 6R15 inside. A stunning piece that I'm sure will be around for years to come. Alright, let's move on to something that isn't a Seiko. It's its close cousin, Orient. An Orient Star in fact. Down here in Australia, Orient Star doesn't get as much recognition as they deserve. The Star Seeker is a non-conventional GMT which doesn't have a jump hour hand, but instead a rotating inner bezel. What I find special about this piece is its fit and finish for the price. At the price these were sold at 6 to 7 years ago, I don't think there was any comparable Seiko. Up now, we have the one and only microband in my collection, the Obris Morgan Infinity. If you haven't heard of them, I highly recommend checking them out. This is one solid piece fitted with the ETA 2824. It's just so robust. 300 meters of water resistance, helium escape valve, and a special touch of a sapphire crystal over the bezel insert. One micro brand that I'd highly recommend. Now we've got the Belova Open Heart. This is a piece that was added to my collection over 8 years ago. Although it hardly gets worn these days, it's a watch that was on my wrist for many personal milestones, so it'll always have a special place in my collection. As we go full circle, we find ourselves back at another Seiko with this lightly modded SKX 007, fitted with a smooth bezel. Another piece that's been on my wrist for many special occasions, but this one doesn't need any explaining on why it's still in my collection. A Seiko lover's collection isn't complete without an SKX. Next is another duo, a bit more odd than the monster duo from earlier. The next two pieces, to most, are almost identical. I say most because to me there is a whole 2mm difference. The one you see first is the ProMaster Fugu NY0080, released in 2018, coming in at 42mm. This one lacks some refinements that can be found in the 2020 release, the NY0119. The NY0119, which was released earlier this year, adds a whopping 2mm to the case diameter, a sapphire crystal, and 120 click bezel. Both of these pieces are Asia-only releases and well worth their spot in the collection. Let's keep it going with this Breitling Avenger Seawolf. An absolute beast of a watch. Because who doesn't need 3000 meters of water resistance for desk diving? This is by far the thickest piece in my collection, coming in at over 18mm. Using an ETA 2824 modified by Breitling, known as the Caliber 17. This is one robust and reliable big chunk of metal. As we move on to the two-door Black Bay GMT, generally known as a bigger watch only to be dwarfed by the Breitling we've just seen. This currently gets a fair bit of wrist time these days. Known as the alternative for the GMT Master 2, which is exactly why you see this one currently in the collection. I feel this piece is more of a placeholder until I get the call. Next up, we've got a vintage Oyster Perpetual date. I'm not usually one for vintage pieces, but this OP date is a special piece that I wore on my wedding day. Circa 1967, lacking quickset date and its fairly small size makes this piece a lot harder to wear. This one might get pulled out when it's time to wear suit and tie. This one slides well under the radar. I don't think this one needs an introduction. The iconic Submariner, aka the Sub-C No Date. In my opinion, one of the most iconic Rolexes ever made. I was lucky enough to get this one in early 2015 before a lot of the current hype ramped up to where it's at today. It's just such a versatile piece. It can be dressed up or down and worn in so many situations. This one will definitely be in my collection forever. Moving on to the piece that arguably gets the most wrist time, the Rolex Explorer 2 216570 with that stunning polar dial. An underrated piece in the Rolex lineup that still presents, in my opinion, some great value in the pre-owned space. And definitely a watch that isn't as easily recognized by those not as caught up in this hobby. Right now, this is my go-to piece. Last on the video, but by no means least, a watch that was a goal of mine for over 15 years, well before I even started collecting. The Rolex Day-Date 118238, double quickset on a President bracelet, often called the President. Solid yellow gold in 36mm is, in my opinion, the absolute classic day-date configuration. This one is far from subtle, but still gets a lot of wrist time, mainly over the weekends. That wraps up my stated collection for 2020. If you have any tips or tricks for making these videos better, please leave a comment down below. If you like what you have seen, please like, comment and subscribe, and stay tuned for upcoming videos where we'll take a closer look at a lot of the pieces you've seen today and many more. Thanks for watching and stay safe.